Hello everyone, welcome to this video of ASP.NET Waveforms. So we'll be learning ASP.NET Waveforms in this crash course. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna download Visual Studio. So downloading Visual Studio is pretty easy. Visual Studio, you can just click search Visual Studio and you can go into one of the sites of Microsoft. You can see we have a lot of options which are here. Not the Visual Studio Code. We'll be going for Visual Studio. So you can click on Visual Studio and wait for a while until the Visual Studio setup has been downloaded. So once it's downloaded, you can just click it and wait for a while. Open the Visual Studio installer, click continue, and you have to wait for a while the installer is getting installed. So once your installer has been installed, what you will get similar to this type of interface. First thing you're gonna need to click is in ASP.NET and web development. So if you click here, then click on install, it will start installing it. I am using Visual Studio Community 2022. You can use any version you want, but I suggest to use 2022. As of now, it is the latest version of Visual Studio. So once you have installed it, you will get similar to this type of interface. You can choose the theme you want. I will be going for the dark theme of Visual Studio. So yeah, you can go ahead and launch it. So it will launch automatically. If it doesn't, then you can click on the launch button over here. So So now before moving to creating a project, we will be saying what is ASP.NET Web Forms. So in this crash course, we need to learn about what is ASP.NET Web Forms. So it is a UI framework by Microsoft for building dynamic data-driven web applications. So most of the applications which we build in web forms are data-driven web applications, and these are dynamic web applications. So it's a UI framework. You can create UI, beautiful UI with waveforms. It was introduced in early 2000s and runs on .NET framework. Okay, so it runs behind .NET framework, and it uses drag and drop and event driven model similar to Windows Phone. If you have experience with Windows Phone, then you will have similar experiences over here also. Now, some of the key features of ASP.NET Waveforms is .aspx pages. So you will see this type of extension in web forms, which is a combination of HTML and server-side code. So this server-side code could be of C# or VB.NET, and code code behind models. So UI in ASPX and logic in ASPX.cs. So we'll be seeing this in the project itself. And we also have rich control set. So we have grid views, we have text box, we have buttons, we have validators, which are pretty essential for a web application, basic web application. So we also have a view state which maintains state between page reload. So every time you reload the page, it maintains a state called view state. We will be looking into this too. And postback. Postback means sends page back to the server to process the event. So there, if we want to process some of the events, then we send the page back to the server, and then server do some of the logic behind it. So now let's talk about who uses ASP.NET Waveforms in 2025. So if you are a university or student, then there are some of the legacy syllables, which are old syllables, which often include waveforms. So we have seen a lot of universities having waveforms included into their course, and government and enterprise projects, which are some old internal internal apps still run on waveforms, so we have to learn waveforms also. So maintenance developer, if you want to be a maintenance developer to support legacy systems, then ASP.NET Waveforms is also a good choice to learn. And for job interviews, also it is one of the essential to test the understanding of your waveforms. So that was a brief overview about ASP.NET Waveforms. So once you are in this window, you can click on create a new project and let it load. So you will see a lot of latest things which are here, like Blazor server app, Blazor. So you will be seeing Blazor, all of these new styled things. But we'll be going for the waveforms application. There are a lot. If you see, we have a lot of options which are here. So if you search wave and let's do waveforms. So so as we can see, we don't get any options for waveforms here. Now, there's this little problem over here. Click on Modify in the Visual Studio 2022. And if you see over here, we have a lot of things that are installed with it. So we have a lot of options here, but we need to go into individual components. And if you see over here, we have a lot of things that are here, but we need this option to be ticked. .NET Framework Project and item templates. It is a little bit more megabytes, and you can just click on modify, or you can just install these also if you want. Okay. .NET 4.7 also, but I think 4.8 is also pretty good to go. So we can just wait for a while until this installs. So if you have older version of Visual Studio, then you might not need to do these modifications. And you can just click on launch. And let's wait for a while until this launches. So now we have this window. Go on create project. Now we can search waveforms again, waveforms. And you can see in the top, we have ASP.NET Wave application. And you can see we also have waveforms over here. Now if you click on there, click on next, and now give your application a name. So we'll just name it as first application. This would be the name. And you can choose the framework over here. I will just leave it for default. Now you will be seeing some of the options over here. You want to create an MPT app, you want to create waveforms app, MVC, Web API, or SPA, single page applications. But we will be going for waveforms. So I just clicked on waveforms. For authentication, if you want authentication, you can select authentications, but we will be going for none for now. And yeah, just click on create. Now we have to wait a while for this project to be created. So once the project has been created, then you will see these types of window. So you will just see a GitHub Copilot also. So you can just close it for now. And over here, you will see a solution explorer, a nice solution explorer over here. And over here, we have a window and a lot of options are here. Now, before we start, we need to learn how to navigate this Solution Explorer. So over here in Solution Explorer, we have a lot of files, but the one we have to see is default.aspx. If you see on default.aspx, if you double click it, then it should open up over here. So you will see a lot of code over here, but over here you have split and design option. So we'll be going for design option, and as you can see, this is the design of our default page. So these are pages. Default is also a page, contact is also a page, about is also a page, because we have aspx. Okay, so that is how we can navigate through these things. Now we also have scripts. So scripts, we have Bootstrap scripts and jQuery pre-installed by default. So you have Bootstrap and jQuery by default. And in content, you will be seeing the CSS folder. So these are from Bootstrap. So the Bootstrap framework, UI framework, it is extracted from there. And over here in app.start, we have some of these CSR files, which we'll be seeing later. Okay. So now how to run this application is a question. So you can click on here and it will run it, or you can click over here and you can just see you have a web browser you can select. So I'm just selecting the Firefox. You can select any web browser you want and then just click on run. So you have two types of running mode. One is for start without debugging and another is this big run button. So for now, we'll be just doing the start without debugging. So when you click on there, you can just wait for a while as the build has been started, and it has hosted in one of the ISS Express server, I think. IS Express server. Now let me just open the Firefox. Where is my Firefox? Okay. So this is the application which we are seeing over there. And these have several pages, about page, contact page, and home page. And application name is also for home page. Okay. So this is a simple web application we are seeing over here. So now the default page is our home page, and the contact page is the contact page, obviously, and about page is for about. So now how can we change this page? If you see, we have a visual representation over here where you can just edit it right over here. Just write ASP.NET Framework, waveforms. You can just write like this, save the page, and then just run it again if you want, or you can just click on this icon also if your browser link is on. Okay. And as you can see, now we have ASP.NET waveforms. Okay, cool. We have already edited over here. Or you can just click on save, like test, and just save it. If you go over here and refresh, it should reload also. When should you rebuild the project is when you are modifying its aspx.cs. Okay. So if you open this default.aspx, then you will be getting this aspx.cs. So this is the C# code for that specific page. So this is for default.aspx. Likewise, you have for contact.aspx. You also have for about.aspx. Pretty simple, right? Now, how can you create a new page? Let's create a new page. Okay. So if you want to create a new page, you can just right click into your first application and go into add. And now you will be seeing a lot of things. You can create an HTML page also, but we will be going for the web form. Okay. So web form, you can just name the page like, let's name it for test. Okay. So as you can see, the test has been created. So if you go into the design file, we don't have anything over here. But now if you want some of the things to add over here, we need a toolbox, but we are not seeing any toolbox right now. So to make that toolbox appear, just click on view, and over here you can see toolbox. And you have toolbox right over here. You can pin your toolbox right over here also. Okay, so we have got our toolbox. Now you can do a very simple things over here. You can see some of the standard labels you can use. Like just drag and drop it over here and just write hello world. and just save it. You need to rebuild it. If you need to rebuild it, you can rebuild it also. So as you can see, we are on the test route. We are on the slash test route. But if we are in the home page, this is our home page. And if you go into the slash test, we can go into the waveform we just created. Okay. So if you go into the source, you can see it creates a specific HTML code over here, HTML type of code. So if you go over here in the top of the page, you have to learn something about here. So this means this page is using C# as language, and auto event wire up is true. Code behind of this thing is the aspx.cs, this.aspx.cs. If we open this, you can see this one. This one is its behind code, or the C# code behind it, and it inherits from first application.test. Okay, so this is pretty simple. And if you see over here in head, we have something known as run at server. So this means we have to include these things, run at server. Over here also we are using run at server. And this is just a div and hello world. We are just printing hello world over here. Pretty simple. Now we have some of the ASP.NET controls which we can use. So for that, we have to write ASP, and it might be a label. Then you can see we have label, and you can just give it an ID for this label also. So let me just write like name, and then close this label and just write name for right now. So this is pretty simple for normal people to understand who have switched to aspx. And then if we reload it, as you can see, we have name over here. Now if we go ahead and inspect this thing, you can see inside this form we have a asp label with id name, and its name is also its content is also name. But it is saying some of the validation error. So label is missing a required attribute called run at. So these server-side controls should have run at, and you can just give it a server. So run at server. Okay. So pretty cool. Now if we save it, mm, nothing changes over here. It remains similar. And if we go into inspect also, now here you can see we don't have that specific type of ASP dot label thing which was appearing before. Now we have some of the random things right over here which say ViewState and a lot of things. So yeah, so it's pretty cool. We have to include that run at server also. Now let's create a simple form. Okay, so like that, we also have ASP is to uh, text box, and we can give it also an ID and like name txt. I'll just give it something like this, name txt, run at, and that would be server, and we will just close this text box. Okay, so if I save it, go into my here, refresh it. Now we have got an input box. Okay, so input box, we have actually got an input box. And then if we go into the design tab also, you can see it is being created over here. So that was a code method of creating a text box. But if we don't want, we can create it here also. So text box, you can just drop it over here and just put it below if it is easy for you. And for label also, you can just drag this label, but if you want, you can use ASP label also. And I just drag and drop this label. So for this, I will just give it like email, and they will enter the email. And if we go over here into the source, you can see email appearing over here, and then these things are appearing over here. So you can actually change it by your type. So I can just put a PR over here. Mm, like this. Also, it works. And for this one, also I can use ASP label. Mm, ID would be for email, and then I can just close it. Inside here, I can put it this one and run it somewhere also over here. So I hope you guys understand what's happening over here. So we just create a label over here and another text box. So for this one, we'll give another ID or email bxt, and it's pretty cool. Okay, so now it's running nice way. Okay, so it's pretty simple to create this much. Now we want to create a button also. So we need a button to submit this button, and we will just redirect the information to another page, or we will do some kind of things over here. Okay, so for that, mm, you can see we have button over here. We can just drag it and drop it over here, put it below button. And if you see, we in the source, you can see we have created something known as ASP button, and we can just give it an ID. So ID might be something like submit, and then the text would be also submit. Yes. Okay. Now that's looking pretty cool for now. And if we go over here, just do a reload, and as you can see, it's pretty okay for now. Now, how do we handle some of the data which are entered over here? So let's say my name is John and my email is john@gmail.com. Okay. And if I click on submit, I want something to happen. Okay. So that would be, I want my information to display it below here. So how can I do over there? Yes, I have to create two labels for output. Okay. So what I need to do is I need to create two labels for output. Now let me go over here. So I can just use this label syntax, and this will be uh, name output. So OP. I will just use OP, and this will be empty for now. And another one would be for email OP, email output. So these are two output. Now, if you save and go into your Firefox, whatever you have, then just open this one. You can see a lot of things are here, but we have these two spans. Okay, so these two spans which doesn't show any information, right? But if you want to show information through here, we can just use something when this button is clicked. So when this button is clicked, now go into the design. If you double click this button, then you will be redirected to a test.aspx.csrc. Okay, so we have been redirected to test.aspx.csrc. So now we have to get the information from here. Okay, information from here, which are these two information stored in these two text box. So we can just directly access it like this text box dot, and just do text, and it will just access the value, and we can just store into a string string text. Sorry, let me just name. So we can just store it into this. Sorry, my keyboard is a little bit acting weird. So I can create another string for email, and just do the email.text. Okay. So I have gathered both of those values from here. So it's pretty easy. You can gather the value for the Xbox into the code like this. Just do the dot text only. Okay. Now I want these to be shown into this output. So for that, what I will do is name.op dot text equals to name, and name dot sorry email dot email op.text equals to email. So Copilot is actually helping me to complete this code, but it's pretty simple. Okay, so we are getting the value from here, storing into these variables, and we are setting the value here. And what I want to do here is I want to just write something like name is to, and just concatenate it like this. And for email also, I can just do email. Pretty simple, right? Now for this, I have done this. Now let me just refresh it. And you can see it says there's an error. There's an error because whenever we change something into aspx.cs into our C# code, we have to rebuild it. Okay, so I'll just rebuild it. And yeah, now I will just give it a name, John, email would be john@gmail.com. So when I hit submit, as you can see, those informations may appear over here. So this is how web forms actually work. So what's happening over here is, let's check it out again. So we have these values which are being entered by our user, and these values are sent to our server, which is this code. And what this code does is, this code stores it over there and then gives it back to our label, which is name op and email op. So this is pretty simple for you guys to understand. Now let's make an increasing counter. Okay, so we'll be creating an counter. Whenever we click on that button, it increases the count. So for that, I will go here, right click over here, and then going to add web forms. Okay, so this will be our counter app. It's a pretty simple app. We just have a button. Whenever we click on that button, the counter just keeps on increasing. Okay, so how can we do that? It's pretty simple for us. We just need an label. So I will just create it over here, code. So that would be ASP with label, and this would be an ID for counter OP. This is how, and then I'll just close it for now. And this would add run add server. And here, initially it's zero. Okay, initially it's zero. Now you can just go ahead and grab a button from here and just put it over there below, actually below. So we have button below, and I'll just rename this. Uh, give this button name add, and add over here in text also. So now if I double click over here, you can see I just got redirected to counter.aspx. Okay. So now let's talk a little bit over here. So whenever our page has been loaded, we just want to create we just whenever our page is loaded, we can do certain types of things. That is, we can set the value of this 0 by our code instead of hard coding over here. So right now I am just hard coding 0 over here, but I will remove that so it doesn't have anything. But now what I can do is I can just do counter op dot text, and I can just give it a value 0 for now. Okay, pretty cool. So I just give it a value 0, but this is actually a string, not a integer. So if I give it something like 0, then let's see what happens. It will give me an error because we need to give it a string. So we have to convert it to string. So if you click on see potential fixes, then there are a lot of things that are being shown over here. So what we can do over here is we can use convert dot to string and just put our value 0 over here. Okay, so this will actually convert it to the string, or you can just do here. So it will actually convert it to the string and set the value of our counter op text, which is this. Right now we don't have anything loaded over here, but dynamically it will set the value of text to that here. Okay, so after that, what we want to do here is we want to increase the value whenever they click on that add button. So how can we actually make that happen? Yes, you can just do counter op dot mm, we have to just get an int value. I'll just get a value. So to get a value, we can just do counter op dot text, but again, it's not an integer, so we have to use convert once again over here. So yeah, this is the exact code we want. Convert dot to int32, so it will convert text, which is a string, into an integer and store it into value. So after we have stored it into value, we will just increase its value, and then we will just do the same thing which is over here. We will just set the value of this, but not to 0, with the value of value. Okay, so I hope you guys understand what's going over here. We are increasing the value, we are getting the value and increasing the value, and then afterwards we are uh, actually setting the value of boundary op text again. Okay, so I'll just run it. So let's click on add, but as you can see, it's not working. We just got one. Okay, so we just got one. So here we need to learn the concept of states, ViewState. So what's happening over here is whenever we click add, there's one postback occurring. So what is a postback? We just discussed in the starting of this video. Whenever we click on add, it sends back to the server. So what does it sends back to the server is the value 0, and it just keeps on incrementing the value of 0 to 1 and 0 to 1. That's all. So what's happening over here in whenever our page is loaded, it sets it to 0 automatically and then sends the value to there. That doesn't make any sense for us. Okay, so it's actually not increasing its value. Okay, so we have to maintain a state between these refreshes. So whenever we click on this button, you can see our page just get reloaded. So we want to maintain the state of our page even if it reloads. So how can we do that? So in C Sharp, or in obviously waveforms, we have a concept called ViewState. So we'll be using ViewState in order to create this application workable. So now let's recreate this thing. So the first thing we're gonna do is ViewState is pretty easy to work with ViewState. It's pretty easy to work with ViewState. Okay. So what we need to do here is in the base load, we have to check if it is postback or not. So if it is not postback, okay, so it's actually giving me advice. So if it is not postback, then what we need to do is What do we mean by if it is not postback? So if user opens the page for first time, okay, so if user opens our page for first time, it is not a postback. But if the user clicks on add button, then it's a postback. It sends back to the server. So what we need to do here is, if it is a postback, then we have to use something known as ViewState. So ViewState, and inside ViewState we can just create a variable like, let's say, count for now, and I will just set its value to 0. Pretty simple. So in our view state, I have created a count where I have stored 0. And for text, for counter output, sorry, text also, I will set it to 0, I guess. Okay. So I will just set this value also 0. So this means the counter is also set to 0, and we have actually created a view state and stored its value to 0 whenever our user first launches its application. Okay. So now if I just run it for now, as you can see, it's actually working now. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. Why is it working? Because of this specific code, is postback. Okay, so is postback. But we are not completely using our view state. We have to use view state instead of this old method. Okay, so to do that, I'll go over here and do some modification. Let me just name it as count. And over here, I have to access the value from view state, not from the what do you say, not from this one. Let me show you guys one thing before showing the use of ViewState. Okay, so I have this thing, resend it. It keeps on increasing the number. But if I just go ahead and inspect, and just let me just say, I just change it to 100 over here, and then do add, it's actually going back to that one, which is pretty reasonable for us. Okay, but now what we want to do here is we want to store it into a view state. We want to access our view state, so we can actually use it. So view state, and yeah, simple. So we are accessing this value directly from here, and we will just do count and just increase its value. And after that, we'll just do the view state again. We'll update our view state again, similar to this. And then we will just update our counter op text to count.toString. Okay. So we just converted count to the string. We can convert it through this method also, or you can just use convert.toString also. So we just updated the value of our view state and then did our job. Okay, so I will just run it once again. This time we are using view state instead of our old method. So our view state is being used right here. Okay, so it's pretty cool to see how view state remembers the previous value of count. So it just keeps on remembering the previous value of count. Okay, so it just remembers, and we just set it and reset it, and it just keeps on happening, right, like that. So this is how we can create a simple counter in there, and I hope you guys understand how ViewState work and how postback also work, and how can we create a counter using those things. Now in this part of video, we will go back to our test.aspx, and we will store these values into our database. So for database, we will be using our local database. You can use SQL Server also, or other databases also. But for this demonstration purposes, we'll be using local database. So for that, go into View, and Last time we were accessing toolbox, but this time we will be accessing SQL Server Object Explorer. So whenever you click there, and then you can see you can open SQL Server, and we have two databases over here. One is local database, MS SQL at LocalDB. So we'll be using this one for now. And here you can go into new query, or inside the databases you can click on add a new database. So we'll just add a new database. So this will be our info. I will just name it as info db. Okay, so this is our info database. Just hit OK, and you can see we have created a database called info db. So inside that we need to create a table for that database. You can just click on add a new table, and this design interface is actually loading. So you can just name it as, let's say, like name of the user, and then we have, this would be var 50, I guess. Okay, so name, and then we have email, and we can just store our password also. Okay, so password also over here, same var 15. Okay, so you can see our um, is being generated over here. So if we want these to be not nulls, then you can just do it like that. And then if you hit Control S, you can save it, the SQL file, but we want to run it. To run it, you can just click on this update database, and it will just say preparing update script, and just click on update database. Now, if you see into the tables, we have a new table called dbo.table. Okay, you can just open it by double clicking over here also. Okay, pretty cool. Now, we have actually created a table with those values. If you want to see what are those values, then you can just see the view designer and just see we have name, email, and password, ID. Also, we also have ID. So yeah, these things are over here. So now this time we will be working into our test.aspx. But before that, we have actually created our database. Now we have to create a connection between our application and our database. So how do we do that? Let's see. So in order to do that, we have to modify one of our Web.config file. So if I double click here, okay, so you can see we have the configuration of our web application. Now over here, we have to add some connection strings. Okay, so connection strings should be inside configurations. So inside configurations, we can just make something like connection strings. Okay, and I'll just close it. So inside connection strings, we can just do an add, and name of that connection string to be, let's say, like my db. So this is our db, and now we need to have our connection string. So connection string should be in this format: data source, and because we are using local db, so I will just write local db slash. You can just write this specific thing over here, mssql local db, which is similar to this one. And then we have to write initial catalog, which is the name of our database. So it's info.db. Okay. So we have actually written all of those things. Initial catalog, info.db. Let me just move it a little bit over there. And then integrated security true. So you can actually use SQL authentication method like your password and your username also if you are using SQL Server. But if you are using local database, then this should actually work for you. Okay. Okay. So and then after we have done our connection string, we have to have a provider name, and that would be system dot data dot SQL client. Okay, so this much we have to configure here. I hope I didn't do any typo error. I will see it later if we did some of the typo error. Okay, so we have configured this pretty in a pretty good style. Now I will just go here into our test.aspx. We have these things over here. We have for our text, we have for our name, for our email. Now for our password, we also need password, right? So I'll just copy this thing, paste it over here, use br. Guys, I'm not teaching you how to style this. If you want to learn it, you can learn the CSS also. You can just implement CSS like you implement in your HTML. You can use Bootstrap also. Okay, for ID, this would be password, and this would be password text. So text, and then this would be password. And I hope let's run this one and let's see what we get into our screen. Okay, so we got all of these things. So whenever I click on the submit button, I don't want it to display over here. I want it to actually store it into our database. Okay, now what we can do here is after we have done these things, we have to now go into the behind code. Okay, so behind code means double click on button, submit. It's the easiest thing. Now over here, we don't want it to set the value right over there. So let me just get a string for password also, and that would be password text. So I just got the value of my email, password, and name. So now into the using block, what I need to do is I need to create a SQL SQL connection, and then just give it a name of that connection, not null. We are making a new SQL connection to our server. So to our connection string. But in order to access that connection string, which we set into Web.config, we can just use it like string on str, and then I'll just make it camel case. Okay, so I can just use system dot configuration configuration dot configuration manager configuration manager and dot connection strings, I guess. So inside connection strings, the just move it over here. We have to access our MyDB. I think I named it as MyDB. Let me just double check it. So yeah, inside connection strings, we add it as a MyDB. So I will just use MyDB dot. We are accessing its connection string. So connection string, and just give it a semicolon. So this is how we can access the web.config file connection strings over here. So this is how you do it. So I'm using LocalDB, but if you are not using LocalDB, then you have to change this connection string to the name of your server and some of the username password if you are using Windows Authentication, you can use that also. So I will just pass this connection string into this SQL connection. Okay, pretty cool. Now, obviously, it is actually giving me how to do that. But the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna write a query. Okay, so string, and that would be query, query. So we will be doing an insertion query. So insert insert into what was it? Uh, a DBO table. Did we just name it as table? I think so. Okay, table. The name of our table is table. So yeah, very good. And we will just give its name, email. I think I made this small, so name, email, and password. So these are the things which I need to do. And here in values, I need to pass the values. But you can actually just do things like this. Just add values over here, like name. From the value over here, you can add this value right over here into your SQL statement. But this is not a safe way to do it. So safe way to do it is just give it as @name for now. Give it comma, @email, and @password. So just do it like this for now. Okay, pretty cool. So we have actually created our query. So now we haven't given its value, which are these values. We how to do give its value is we have to create a SQL command. Okay, SQL command which is CMD. We can just name it as CMD. Then just do something like new SQL command and give the value query to the connection. Okay, query to the connection. So query and the con is the connection which we have. So we have give those parameters to our SQL command. Now what we need to do here is cmd.parameters. Now parameters dot add with value. So now we are giving the value of these parameters. So we will just do like add rate name. So for add rate name, we are giving the value name. Pretty simple, right? So it will replace add rate name with the name, this name. Okay. So likewise that we have to do for parameters dot add with value. And for email, we'll just do email cmd dot parameters. For password, we'll do password. But over here, we have to do add rate e. Add rate e. Okay. So it will just replace the values over here. Pretty cool, right? So now we have to open the connection now. So we'll just open the connection by just doing the connection dot open. So it will just open the connection of SQL. Now, then after that, we will just execute this query, execute this command. So execute non-query. Okay. So non-query, and then after we executed our query, we can just we can just close our connection, and in our output, if we so see over here, we have these two OPs. I will just remove this one, and here I'll just do output So for now, I will update the text of this output. Okay. So output dot text equals to added added successfully. So this will be the output after we have successfully added it into our database. So this is actually how it works. But if we go once again here into our table, uh, I want these to properties. Primary key true for ID we might have a little problem here because table is actually a wizard keyword and we actually created a table named table, so that's pretty not good problem we have. So yeah, so we will just say table. We will just create another table, which is a good one. Mhm. This table name should be changed, so I think we can just change the name. So I'll just try it by changing its name. Okay. So properties name. Let's just change its name to. Uh, so this name should be changed. Instead of that, I will just create a new table. I think this table is not working. Mm, I'll just delete this table. Okay, let's just add a new table. Hmm. Yeah, table, and give the name of this table a little bit STUDNTSR. Let's just info. I'll just name this table as info, and we have name, which is a var 50 name and email password. Cool. Okay. And this time, let's just I will just make it an identity. Identity. What does identity do is it just inserts the value of these ID automatically by itself. So it just inserts the value of ID mm, with the new value. So every time we insert, it just keeps on incrementing the value of ID. Okay. So we'll just see what happens. So now I will just save this one. Here I need to change it to info, save it, and I will just run it. Hmm. Okay, so name, I will just give some random name and random email and random password and just hit submit and it says added successfully. Okay, so now we will be seeing over here, we need to see the values of this data. So view data. And as you can see, it has actually inserted our data over here into our database. So it is actually inserted over here. So this is how you can actually insert it into the database. Now, so the next thing we need to do is we need to have some validation check. Right now, if we see into our application, I can just write something else like it's not even email, and this password is also being displayed over here, then it's saying added successfully. That's not how it should work, and it is actually being added also. Okay, so this we need to have an email validation over here. Okay, so how can we add email validation? So we will be implementing a client-side validation. How do we implement client-side validation is go into the desk.aspx, and over here below below this email, what we need to do is we need to have an regular expression validator. So we'll be using a regular expression validator and just give it an ID. Let's say uh, val email. So it will just validate our email, and it will also run at server again. And then we will be having something known as control to validate. So which control we want to validate with this regular expression is our email text. So we want to validate this one, and we want to have an error message. Okay. So error message, and that would be, let's say, like invalid email, and this should be capital. Okay, this one. And then now we need to have a expression validation expression. So validation expression would be something like an expression which is used to validate email. So for now I have this expression, this regular expression for the validation. And let's do another thing over here. Display, and let's just make it dynamic. 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 Okay, so display is also dynamic. Hmm, dynamic. So now we have actually set up our validation over here. Now, if I go over here, if I just refresh it, go back, I guess. So if I just write like this, then it says invalid email, right? Says invalid email. That means it's trying to validate this email, but it is not an email. But if I just do something like this and give it in an email format and just give it a password, and as you can see, it gets added successfully. So this is how you can add a validator and client side. You also have something called for color, and just you can just make it red also. Rate the validation. The validation becomes red. So if I have something like that, I think I need to refresh it or maybe go back. If I don't have this one, you see, I'm getting invalid email. So this is a client-side validation. You can actually add it into the ASP.NET application. Now for server-side validation, you can also add a server-side validation. But for server-side validation, you need to go into submit, and then in the submit, this one email should be validated. So to check if this email is valid, we need to check before doing all of these tasks. We need to check if our email is valid. So we can just do something like if system dot text dot regular expressions dot regex dot is match. Okay, so if it doesn't match our email with our regular expression, which I think I pasted over here also, this regular expression. And please add an add symbol over here. Okay, so add symbol over here, over there. And this is a regular expression. And if it doesn't match with this expression, then what we need to do here is we need to just return. Okay, return, and just say in our output.text, which we have over here, instead of added successfully, we will be saying email format is not correct, or that is not correct. So this is the server side validation you can actually add. So if we go over here, and I will just comment this out. I think this comment this out. So I just commented this out and I just revealed it because I was messing with server code. So now if I try to submit it, then it will say email format is not correct. Okay, pretty good, right? So email format is not correct. Now it is doing the server side validation, but I can enable both of them, which makes my application good and it doesn't generate some kinds of error. Did I forget to save it and refresh it? If I just do it like this, then it is saying invalid email. Okay, pretty cool. So both of those validation are being displayed. So now this is how you can use validators. We have other types of validators also. If you go into design and go into, let me just say, view toolbox, we have a lot of tools are there. For validation also we have compare validator. You can compare between things. You can just compare it and you can have a custom validator also, regular expression validator. This is the one we use. You can actually use a range validator also. So if you see, I can just drag it and drop it over here, range validator. And for range validator also we have similar types of things, range validator and all of those things. And if you click on range validator, you can customize it over here. So what does this range validator do is it just checks if your input is in that specific range or not. You can also add a validation summary. These things are also part of this. But because this is a crash course, so we are making it much more understandable for you guys. And regular expression is one of the most important and most used validation methods. Okay, so now the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna have a page where we can okay, so where we can display these information into the database. Okay, into the screen, these information into the screen. So how can we do that is I will just create a new page, uh, just to add new web form. That would be page RT view data. Okay, so view data, I just created a new page over here, new web form to view data. So now in this video, so we'll be using something known as GridView in order to show this data. Now you can go into design and go into data panel. You have a lot of things here in data also, but we will be using GridView. So you can just search over here, GridView. It's also in data and I'll just paste it over here. Okay. So GridView is like this. So it is saying choose a data source right now, and we will choose it by ourselves. But let's go into source code and just do some modification in the source code. So we have a grid view one. This would be our grid view one server, and we will just say have another attribute called auto generate columns to be true. Okay, so auto generate columns is true, and we have a grid view. You can see, but we need to feed this data dynamically. So how can we do that? Let's go into view data and let's go into its behind code. Whenever our page is being loaded, we want it to go to the connection string. What I will do is I will just copy the code of test, I think, instead of rewriting this code, this configuration manager, because we are going to be accessing from that again. And we will be also using this code. Okay, pretty cool, right? So yeah, it's pretty cool. So now we need to just make a query, and that query would be select all from info. our table name was info, so select all from info. And then we need to use something known as SQL data adapter. So data adapter DA and the new SQL data adapter. Here we need to pass our query and connection. So over here, if you see in the test, we were using SQL command, but whenever we need to receive some data from the database, we will be using SQL data adapter. And we also need something known as data table. Data table is a data structure. So I just created a data table. Now data adapter dot fill that data table. Okay, so what will we do is this data adapter will fill the data table. This is our data structure. Okay, so and this data structure will then be the data source for our grid view. So grid view one dot data data sorry data data source would be dt. So this data table will be the data source for our grid view. Okay, so please remember this, guys. We are creating data adapter and we are actually storing it into data table, and then only we are setting the value of our grid view. Now then we need to do a data bind. Okay, so we just did a data bind. This is everything we need to do over here, and I'm just seeing a error. I think one. All right. Yeah, pretty cool. So we just did a data mine. So it will just go ahead into our database and just select all of the files, and then it will just display into our grid view. Now let's just run this application, and let's see if it shows the data. As you can see, it is showing into a grid. Yeah, it is showing all of our data into a table format. That's pretty cool. So it has already done this. So this is how we can access the data from our database into our data adapter and into the data table. We can use this data table to in order to access the data individually, or you can just directly bind it to the grid view and display it into the grid. Okay, cool. So this is it for the crash course of ASP waveforms, ASP.NET waveforms. I hope you guys have a basic understanding of how ASP waveforms works, ASP.NET waveforms actually work. And you can actually create these things. Now for authentication sessions and some of the advanced topics, I might create another video based on the request I get for this video, but these are the basic things which you can learn in ASP waveforms. Thank you for watching. Make sure you guys subscribe to my YouTube channel, and please support me also, and I will also keep making content for you guys. Thank you.